Hey, it's Alicia Sweeney, and you are watching another session at home with us here from Indie 1023 from Colorado Public Radio. I'm in Denver, and she's in Van Nuys, California, joining me to talk about her debut album. I'm not a mother, but I have children. It's musician, poet, producer Shungudzo. Hello.
Hi, it's so nice to see you and talk to you.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. With tours being on hold and everything, I miss like that tangible, like face-to-face time with musicians. And so, Zoom is an okay, option.
And you get to kind of like peek into someone's life in a way that you never would have before.
I know. And for those of you that noticed the pool table, ask me later and I'll tell you why she got that. Well, how are things going your way? You're gearing up for this album that you've been working on to come out. Tell me more.
They're going pretty well, very surreal in so many ways because I've never made an album before, nor have I ever really put so much focus on releasing art as myself before. I've spent so much time writing songs for other artists, which has been wonderful, but this is really new and really exciting and also really intimidating in some ways too. Like, talk about myself. I don't know if I can.
That it is fascinating because you are also just by love a poet that you've been writing poems nearly every day since you were a little kid. And then it's interesting to hear you say that you're just a wee bit nervous for this to all come out because you're bearing your soul and heart. Before we pivot and talk about the new record, you mentioned that you've written songs for others. In anything we may know of or have heard?
Um, I mean, I would love to share just some of my favorites, some artists who I work with who I think you should check out if you haven't already. Jessie Ware is someone I really love working with and was able to contribute to a lot to her previous album and currently working on the upcoming one. I really enjoy making music with her because for me, music is a form of activism in many ways, right? And in this case, I feel like Jessie's music is so sex and pleasure positive and really encouraging people to get out there and explore their sexuality in whatever ways that they want to. So I love her music for that reason. And then Chiiild from Montreal is a great friend of mine and a phenomenal musician, someone who I've also done some collaborating with. And if you're looking for just a phenomenal Black alternative artist or a new phenomenal Black alternative artist to put on your radar, you should check out Chiiild.
And that's like with like 3 eyes or something, right?
Yeah, Chiiild with 3 eyes.
Yeah, I love that. I will look them. I know Jessie Ware's music. I'm gonna look up Chiiild also. So first of all, I can't wait for everyone to hear this new record of yours. 16 tracks long, 3 of them are these poetic interludes. And I want to take a moment to read your words on how you define this album of yours. I'm not a mother, but I have children, a musical and poetic conversation on my experiences as a Black woman in Zimbabwe and America. And I just find this record to be hopeful, heartfelt. Talk to me about its inception.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I didn't necessarily set out to make an album. I did set out to make a project, and I initially relationships with my parents, where I come from, and then leading to where I am and where I'm going. And I really wanted to discuss our relationships or my relationships with my parents because especially having written so many songs for other people about their boyfriends or their girlfriends, I've always been sitting there thinking, the outcome of this relationship was totally, in this case, determined by your relationship with your mom or your dad or your family or whatever. And so why are we talking about this when we could be talking about that, the real sort of cause rather than the result?
Yeah.
And as I started writing songs about my mom and my dad, I guess it started becoming so personal to me that the only other natural place to go was into sort of my experiences in Zimbabwe and then moving here, which included, so much of my life being both impacted and centered around race.
Mm. Mm. And you've felt race issues both here and in Zimbabwe, right? When you were trying to become a gymnast when you were younger, you
Mhm.
experienced some
Well,
things overseas.
yeah, I mean, there's racism everywhere,
Yeah.
right? And it shows up in many ways. It shows up in the very direct form of itself, which is somebody just straight up telling you that they don't like you because of the color of your skin, or bullying you because of it. People calling me as a kid the N word or whatever it was. Like, those are super direct forms. And then there are the forms of racism that are more indirect, like, I'm pretty sure I didn't get that job because I'm Black, or, my boss treats me differently from the white men, or doesn't hear my ideas as well. And, that I mean, it still feels direct if you're a person of color, but it's sort of more shrouded in these layers such that it's harder to call it out. Because if you say, hey, I know you're not listening to my ideas because I'm a woman of color, then the person who's not listening could go, what do you mean?
Mhm.
So in Zimbabwe, I would say that I encountered more extreme, and I was a child, mind you, but I encountered more extremely direct racism. Kids beating me up while telling me they didn't like me because of the color of my skin. In school, I was bullied a lot for being the lightest skinned person, for being mixed, and therefore, in the eyes of some of my classmates, partially an oppressor. And then I would go to gymnastics where there really weren't a lot of people of color, if any, sometimes. And I would be bullied for being Black and beat up for being Black. And so it was this interesting, weird, and difficult dynamic as a kid where I really didn't, as a mixed person, I didn't know where I um, fit in.
Mhm.
Um, and I didn't really fit in anywhere. In gymnastics, as a kid, there had never been a woman of color on the artistic gymnastics team. And so that sort of became my goal at a really young age. And that became the thing that got me through the bullying and got me through the desire to quit. And I would say by the point that I made the team, I was completely done with gymnastics, in many parts because of how much bullying I had to face every day,
Yeah.
both from children and from their parents, and even from certain people within gymnastics organizations. But I knew that it was really important to make the team and to compete in order to show other women and kids of color that it's a sport that they could do too.
And you talk about with this record that some of it is about your parents' experience and such. How did that dynamic go growing up? Were you able to talk about things that you've just shared here with us? Like, were you able to talk about that as a kid? I mean, you were just a child, so
Mhm.
you know.
Um, I would say that I didn't necessarily grow up in both a community, within a culture in which talking about your feelings or your heartbreak or your pain or your trauma was normalized. I grew up in a place that was very much where, and this is a beautiful thing, people sort of lead with their optimism. So a place where somebody having a tough day is much more likely to say, like, it's a beautiful day, look around. And I do think that that's a really beautiful quality to have, but it led to it being quite difficult to discuss, for myself, what I was going through, and for most people I knew, the struggles that they had, whether it was in Zimbabwe that they were struggling economically, or at the height of the epidemic, AIDS epidemic, when so many people I knew, even people in my family, were dying of AIDS. Still, no one was really talking about it. There was just sort of this notion that you just keep moving forward and you leave all of the past, even colonialism, all of that, leave that behind and move forward into the future, which was beautiful. But it definitely meant that I didn't have a great outlet for my emotions outside of poetry, which is a lot of why I began writing, because that became my way of sort of um, uh, healing myself. And it also became a form of therapy because I could look at the things I wrote a month ago or a year ago and see how far I had come emotionally, and also see the areas in which I hadn't grown but wanted to.
Yeah, like processing your trauma that way. And I
Mhm.
love that idea of leading with optimism, which I feel like you do that in your music. I feel like I can hear that on your album. Um, uh, Talking about the album a little bit more, I understand you wrote and produced it mostly yourself.
Mhm.
Did you face any challenges while you were doing this, or what did you learn about yourself in this process and embodying all the roles?
I learned something that I've always believed, but I've often forgotten, which is that anything is possible. I really do believe that anything is possible. And yes, there are systemic roadblocks for so many people, and there are so many barriers in the way of anything actually becoming possible, but that like the act of trying is so much of what leads to something actually happening.
Yeah.
I felt very scared in the beginning when I decided that I would produce all of the songs. I had written them, like sitting in this house. I think all except for one of them, the melody and the lyrics, it was just me.
Mhm.
Um, and so that part for me has always come naturally because I love writing. But when it comes to production, especially having been a writer for other artists for so long, as you're aware, there aren't a lot of women producing,
Yeah.
or rather, not a lot of women being acknowledged as
Yeah.
producers in,
Absolutely.
in music. So I was so used to exclusively working with men, as a writer who would then take the track and finish the production. Or if I wrote something at home by myself, I would then email it to a man who would finish the production. And it's just sort of what you're told to do and encouraged to do. And I've even sent demos in that I produced and then been told, we're going to need a man to finish that before we send it out.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people both know and don't know how diminishing that they really are to women when it comes to production. So it was very important for me when it came to this album to let go of my both habit and insecurities that led me to allowing men to finish my stories for me, and to just give myself the challenge of doing it myself. And um, there were times when I was really doubtful, like, oh man, how am I going to do this? And then with each song, I would finish it and go, oh, I did it. And over time, it became less of a surprise to me that I had done it and more of a um, given.
What song are you most proud of in this moment on the new record?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard. That's a really hard question because um, I love lyrics.
Mhm.
So I would say lyrically, American Dream is one of my favorite. Um,
Will you share a lyric that touches you?
um, oh, I'm trying to think of which part. Oh my gosh.
I know I'm putting you on
Okay.
the spot.
It goes, America is a dictator while capitalism is a very pretty word. The truth of the matter is we're in a labyrinth, and unless you're born rich, you might not get out of
Yeah.
it. There's that one. And then there's the end of the world can't change for you, but you can change the world, which is about, I sort of wrote it from the perspective of my mom speaking to me. And sort of, she's always had these really high hopes and expectations for me that sometimes veered themselves as over perfectionism, but also oftentimes were so much of the reason why I believe that anything is possible. She really believed that I could do anything I set my mind to. So I end that song just repeating over and over again, if you can imagine it, then it can happen. And although that's such a simple thing to say, the harmonies and the way it came together makes it feel so epic. And I listen to that song when I actually need a reminder that I don't suck.
I think we all need that reminder. It's like, is this imposter syndrome, or am I just not giving myself enough credit?
Or it's a gosh darn system telling us that we can't be all of the things that we want to be. And especially when it comes to being a woman and trying to excel in any field.
Yeah, I gotta I gotta give it up for your mom. I don't know her, but just when I read about your life and when we started playing your first single, I don't know, however many months ago,
Uh-huh.
I was just like, holy smokes, like this mother has, or this family has just encouraged this child and let this child like plant her own seeds to watch her grow or whatever. Like you
Mhm.
being a writer, you taking college courses when you're 12 years old, you being a wonderful gymnast and everything. I was wondering, like, when you peek back at your younger self, like what have you learned to become the musician that you are today?
Yeah, well, I would say that I forgot how I put it. I was talking to someone yesterday, but it was about being goal driven. And when I have a goal, I find it so much easier to fulfill it. Or in the hard times when things feel impossible, if I can keep my eye on that goal, it helps me through the times that I really feel like I'm just clawing through, mud to get there. And as a kid, to honestly, my goal was to please my parents.
Yeah.
I grew up in a culture and community in which you respect your elders, and that meant even your big sister or your friend's big sister, even if she was 2 years older than you. This notion that you really respect your elders and you trust that whatever they want for you is best for you. And I don't 100% agree with that line of thinking, but as a kid, I just wanted my parents to be proud of me and be happy about the things I did. And whatever they said to do, I did. So when it came to ballet and gymnastics and school and the ways in which I was able to excel, I wouldn't say it necessarily came from being more talented than anyone else. It came from one, having the privilege of education or to be able to do these things. Even if I was on a scholarship, it was still a privilege to be able to do these things. And two, it came from my parents being highly disciplined and making me highly disciplined, and the amount of respect that I had for them. So actually, music uh, is the first thing I did for me. Music's the first thing I did without my parents and what they wanted for me in mind, and also the first thing I did that they really didn't support me at all in. They've come around because they've come around because I haven't had this massive character downfall or all of the things that they thought would occur as a result of me pursuing something that they viewed as risky. But it was definitely the first time in my life that I prioritized my desires over theirs.
Mm. Yeah. And I'm sure, like, proving to your parents, the lyrics, the songs, they do speak for themselves.
Yeah.
And one song, Fatherless Child, I love the lyricism in that one. And there's some nods that caught my ear. I'm guessing it's a play on Odetta's Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child. Is there
No,
a little bit of
no, I had no idea that that was a song.
like it's like a song from 1960,
Yeah.
and so I was just like, I was thinking about that and I was wondering if it was a nod, but I do love the lyrics of that. Sometimes I feel like a waterless rose, sometimes I feel like I had to grow thorns. Do you
Mhm.
remember when those lyrics came to you? And
I made that song on a really sad day. I haven't seen my father in person in, I think now 13 years. And we've begun building a really awesome relationship over FaceTime and Zoom in this time, you know, uh, but but I just was really missing him on that day. I was really missing, I think that if you it, it's such a silly, not silly. I found that a lot of my life, I really wished that I had a family that was cohesive and together. My parents on both sides of their family too aren't necessarily super close with their siblings. Our family is very much a family in which people exist as individuals, and once they leave the house, they're gone.
Mhm.
So I didn't really grow up with my siblings in the way that a lot of people grow up with their siblings. I didn't grow up with my dad in the way that some people get to grow up with their dad. And due to my mom being a single mother, I didn't grow up with my mom in the way that a lot of people get to grow up with their moms, because she had to work so much in order to make ends meet. So I felt very lonely at times. And it took me a lot of years of self work and therapy, to not feel like there was something was missing in me because I didn't have this traditional family, and to also not hold any resentment, because try as you might, sometimes you do feel resentment when you see somebody with parents who were always there for them or with them, or parents who have the means to support their dreams financially, or all of these sort of little things that a lot of people in families that work together sometimes take for granted. I always longed for. And I wrote this song in a moment. Actually, it was one of the final moments of me feeling that way. It was sort of like the final little knob to turn to feel really healed and to feel whole in spite of my family's dynamics, which also allowed me so much love and forgiveness for them, and to like really view my parents as people who did the very best that they could, and my siblings as people who are doing the best that they can. And I hope that they see me that way too, but to really start to just view my people as people who want love.
Yeah.
And this song, Fatherless Child, is me like really in a moment of wanting love.
Yeah, it's a striking track. I feel like I put myself as a radio person like in the seat of someone that's either driving their car or listening wherever they're listening to the radio, and I just know that your music is catching people's attention. I find it so the whole record is so striking. And even if someone was to just listen to one song of yours, I think they'll remember you. And I just wish you all the luck. I do want to ask before we go, because I know we have to wrap. We've looked back and we've looked in the present. Now let's look ahead. It's June 2021. What does the next year look like for you? Are you just going to be at home? Are you going to play some shows or?
I'm hoping to play some shows. I'm trying to materialize this in every interview, written or video or audio. I just have to say it out loud because I feel like the more I say it, the more likely it is. I would love to open for Michael Kiwanuka. I'm just putting it out there.
Oh my God. Yes. We're manifesting this.
Help me manifest that. And yeah, I mean, in general, I would love to open for some artists who are either using their music as a platform to speak about what's happening in the world, or are artists who don't necessarily fit in any mold, which is something that I think is very important. Like on this album, I wanted to explore different sounds and textures depending on the message of the song. And as an artist of color, I've often felt very pressured to be one thing, particularly soul or R&B, and sort of unheard if I did anything else. And this album to me, is many things, but one of those things is also a challenge to the notion that artists of color ought to be one-dimensional. That's
why I love that you define the genre of your music as socio-political, where it's like, don't put me in a box,
Yeah.
I love that. I know we got to wrap. The debut album, I'm Not a Mother, But I Have Children, out June 18th. I wish you the best of luck, and we are manifesting Michael Kiwanuka for 2022. This has been another session at home on Indie 102.3.
Thank you for the wonderful chat, and take care.
Thanks.